When my students hear me talk about the Pareto Principle or the famous 80-20 rule, some of them roll their eyes and think it's just another buzzword. But it isn't. It's probably the most powerful filter you can use in your life, and especially in language learning. The basic idea is simple. In many areas, roughly 80% of the results come from 20% of the causes. It's not a precise mathematical law, but a pattern that shows up everywhere. In business, 20% of customers often bring in 80% of the profit. In your wardrobe, you probably wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time. Even in your friendships, a small number of people are responsible for most of your meaningful conversations. Think about everyday life. When you are stressed, it is usually not because of 50 different things. It is 2 or 3 recurring sources. One difficult colleague, one family conflict, one financial problem. If you focus on solving those vital few issues instead of the trivial many, your life improves dramatically. The same goes for health. Walking every day and not overeating sugar will improve your body more than a drawer full of expensive vitamins. Now, let's apply this to language learning, because this is where it becomes truly exciting. In any language, a small number of words is used again and again. The most frequent 1,000 words often cover a huge percentage of everyday speech. If you seriously master these words instead of passively recognizing 10,000, you will understand far more and speak much more confidently. That is the 80-20 rule in action. Grammar is similar. You don't need to obsess over every tense or exotic structure. In English, for example, most conversations rely on the present simple, present continuous, past simple, present perfect, and going to or will for the future. If you can use these few structures quickly, accurately, and automatically, you will sound far more fluent than someone who knows every conditional in theory but hesitates in every sentence. My own lessons are built around this principle. When I prepare a course, I ask myself, which 20% of language will my students use in 80% of their real situations? So we practice ordering food, making small talk, dealing with basic work emails, talking about plans, giving opinions, and telling simple stories from the past. We repeat these situations again and again with slightly different vocabulary. It's not glamorous, but it is extremely effective. I also encourage my students to design their own 80-20 plan. For example, if someone works in IT support, their vital 20% might be phrases like, "Have you tried? Let me check. Can you send me a screenshot?" And vocabulary related to errors, updates, and settings. A doctor will need expressions for symptoms, treatment, and reassurance. A tourist needs directions, hotel phrases, and restaurant language. Once you identify your main contexts, you can ignore a lot of useless noise. The biggest mistake I see is students spreading their energy too thin. 10 apps, 5 textbooks, hundreds of random YouTube videos. They feel busy, but not effective. If they instead spent 30 focused minutes a day on the most frequent words, the most common grammar, and the situations that truly matter to them, they would progress twice as fast with half the stress. The Pareto Principle won't learn the language for you, but it will stop you wasting your time. And for an adult with a busy life, that's not just useful, that's survival.
I respect Barry's enthusiasm for the Pareto Principle. I really do. But I get nervous whenever people start treating 80-20 as some kind of universal law or magical shortcut. Life is rarely that simple, and language learning certainly isn't. The idea that 20% of causes create 80% of results sounds attractive, but it can easily become an excuse for oversimplification. In everyday life, you can see the limits of this thinking quite clearly. Imagine your friendships. Maybe a few people do give you most of your emotional support, but that doesn't mean the others are useless. Some friends are important on specific occasions. One gives brilliant career advice. Another is the only person who understands your odd sense of humor. They may not belong to the vital 20%, yet your life would be poorer without them. The same applies to health. Walking and eating less sugar are indeed powerful habits, but if you only focus on those big wins and ignore sleep, stress, posture, or mental health, the long-term result is still a mess. The world doesn't divide itself neatly into vital and trivial. There is a long tail of smaller factors that still matter. When we move to language learning, this obsession with efficiency can become even more problematic. Yes, high-frequency vocabulary is essential, but students don't live only in the world of go, have, and do. A nurse needs very different words than an engineer, and a literature lover needs quite different language than a tourist. If we worship the top 1,000 words too much, we risk producing learners who can talk forever about things and stuff, but struggle to say anything precise or meaningful in their own field. Grammar is no different. Focusing on a few common tenses may work for basic survival, but it easily leads to fossilized mistakes. If learners never move beyond that core 20%, their language becomes permanently flat and childish. Nuance, politeness, and subtle attitudes often depend on less frequent structures. Indirect questions, conditionals, reported speech, these may not dominate daily conversation, but they are essential for sounding educated and respectful. And then there is listening. I really doubt you can apply the Pareto principle in any strict way here. Listening skills depend on exposure to a wide range of accents, speeds, contexts, and speakers. You cannot simply listen to some top 20% of recordings and expect to understand everyone. Real conversations are messy. Background noise, mumbling, unfamiliar topics, emotional tone. The vital few approach fails completely if it prevents learners from facing this rich variety. So, while the Pareto principle can be a useful reminder not to waste time, treating it as a sacred rule is dangerous. Languages are human, complex, and beautifully uneven. Trying to squeeze them into an 80-20 formula might save effort, but it can also quietly limit how far a learner will ever go.